Think about big Hollywood stars, particularly coming to London in the golden age, as they often say. You couldn't really think of anybody possibly bigger than this particular lady. She'd been a star since the silent movies, as her former co-star Betty Davis had pointed out, and of course still created waves of excitement well into her 60s, which is what she was when she arrived in London in the middle 60s. This time though to pay a visit to the most famous black door in the United Kingdom, if not the world. We're talking of course about the time when Harold met Joan. But what did he have in mind behind that now famous black door of number 10 Downing Street? As ever, let me explain. Hi, good to see you today. I hope you're all right. We're in the middle of Parliament at the moment. We're waiting, of course, for yet another MP to come along and do an interview with us, all about what we can expect for the forthcoming general election. This is the excitement of life. I'm mocking, of course. It's lovely to be out in the fresh air. Let me just give you a quick sort of tour around, then you can see exactly where we are, should I say. As you can see there, elements of Westminster Abbey coming up now, and then of course the Houses of Parliament, all of the beautiful flags of the world there. Yes, I know, frightening, isn't it really? And so I think it looks really resplendent right now, actually, London. It's just the right sort of climate, isn't it? Turn a full circle, and then of course you've got Big Ben, if you can see that there, yeah? And then of course you're turning back round or into Whitehall, and all the rest of the paraphernalia that you always see and love, of course, on your television screens around the world. This, of course, was an idea for none other than the Hollywood star Joan Crawford. You see, Joan was a master manipulator at Publicity. Now, of course, a queen of Pepsi-Cola too, and one of their grand ambassadors, you know, going around the world selling the brand. When she came over to London to make a movie called Berserk, set in the world of circus in the middle 60s, this was something of a different Joan, as it were. She was trying to get out of the ghoulish horror sort of things that she got into with things like, you know, Straight Jacket, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, stuff like that. She hoped that people would re-see her as an actress, you know, something a little bit more, shall we say, akin to greatness rather than a grand dame of the ghoulish macabre, as she put it. Why do I always get cast in these bitter roles? She seemingly couldn't work it out. What's interesting though is this, you see, she decided upon the request of the then British Prime Minister Harold Wilson to pop along to 10 Downing Street, an idea she thought would make a marvellous publicity coup, of course, for her forthcoming film. It co-starred Diana Dawes, the British sex bomb, who had been instrumental in creating lots of publicity way back in the 1950s with the infamous mink bikini at the Cannes Film Festival. I kid you not. So Joan wasn't too keen on Diana coming along for the visit, even though it could have placated the way. But you see, the British Prime Minister at the time, Harold Wilson, was a canny northerner from Huddersfield in West Yorkshire, the same town where, of course, the Hollywood star James Mason came from. But he had bigger fish in mind. You see, Harold loved the world of show business, and he loved the idea of people knowing him even more if that were possible. Even at that time, as I say, he was the Prime Minister. He'd cozied up to the world famous Beatles just at the cusp of their big career, so he knew exactly what to do to make sure, well, you know, that he could get seen. And when Joan came along, he had the perfect idea, also he thought, to make sure he could get in on her latest movie. You see, he quite liked the idea of even being featured as an extra. I kid you not. You see, Harold thought appearing in one of the scenes inside the circus ring, or indeed just a small cameo, would go a long way to making sure that his legacy as a great British leader would be cemented. Yes, that's how bad it was. What was interesting though, and I always find these things particularly interesting, is this, that Joan got the whiff of this, and she'd already been down that route, because she decided to cast rather, well, not a good idea, let's put it that way, a member of the Pepsi board who also had an idea in a previous movie called Straight Jacket. He simply couldn't act. He was playing a delivery man and he couldn't pull it off. But of course, if she wanted to keep the job in Pepsi, she had to keep him sweet. She didn't need Harold Wilson, but what she did need was some publicity for her movie. So she went along alongside the independent television commercial cameras who were there to record everything, including her exit. And basically the chit-chat went quite well, and alongside his wife Mary, Harold muted the idea that he could possibly pop up in the film. Joan said it would be a wonderful idea, but it could be, well, political. And, was this a good idea for him? And more importantly, the Hollywood backers who were putting the money up for the movie. She very should we put it nicely, tactfully, according to a source who was working for Harold at the time and told me, just slightly moved away from the idea. The way it didn't happen. And even though Harold offered to visit the set, which was filming out in West London, she didn't take up that particular request. She knew what Harold was after. What Joan had done very cleverly was make sure that she got pictured outside number 10, meeting the British Prime Minister, getting the publicity for her picture, and very cleverly and unpolitically, she'd made sure that Harold had left with nothing. Joan was nothing but a canny player. And as she found out a few years later, when Pepsi-Cola tried to dump her from the main board, she realised what comes around goes around. But what could have been, of course, was a British Prime Minister in a Hollywood movie with a Hollywood legend that was Joan Crawford. Neil Sean, Parliament, London.